Monday morning, it's ITV1. Jeremy Kyle at 9:25 after GMTV.
Snatched in Baghdad, the British aid worker being held hostage. Good morning to you. This is the News Hour on GMTV.
It's 6 o'clock on Monday the 28th of November 2005.
Well, on the programme this morning, Professor Norman Kember was kidnapped along with 2 Canadians and an American aid worker. The Foreign Office have launched an urgent investigation.
Also this hour, the teenage time bomb. Are Britain's children heading towards a mental health catastrophe because of their drug use, their attitude to sex and the effect of family breakdowns? Some shocking results were revealed in a new report.
And does this video prove bullying is commonplace in the armed forces? Tell us what you think about the images. Are they evidence of ritual bullying or just the way trained killers should behave? Well, we'd like to know what you think. Text us on 81189 or email us on gm.tv.
And we'll be getting the views of Colonel Tim Collins in a few minutes' time on that. But first, Andrea, with this morning's weather picture.
Good morning, Andrew. Good morning. Now, we've got some problems, as you'd expect, on the roads this morning. We've got icy conditions across many parts of the country. Also, we've got problems with snow, as you'd expect. The main areas are going to be across parts of Yorkshire. We're expecting between 5 to 10 centimetres of snow to fall. The Met Office has issued a warning for this, so bear that in mind if you are going to be heading out on the roads in Yorkshire this morning. Elsewhere, some bright spells as we go into this afternoon. There won't be that much in the way of change. Still mainly coastal regions that are going to be affected by the wintry showers, but it'll be cold everywhere. Kate.
Thanks, Andrea. But first, our top story this morning, and the Foreign Office has begun an urgent investigation into the kidnapping in Iraq of a British aid worker. Sue Jameson is at the Foreign Office in London. Sue, what more do we know?
Well, the Foreign Office have confirmed that it was Professor Kember who was taken. Aside from that, there are few official details. But the country is in touch with both America and Canada, and an urgent investigation has been launched. There are a few more details about Professor Kember this morning. We know that he was a peace activist, that he'd been very against the war in Iraq, and that he was there as part of a group of humanitarian workers. He'd been a professor at a London teaching hospital. Now, it seems that the group, which is one of the largest groups of Westerners taken, was in the western part of the city where there is minimal security. And of course, that is going to beg the question of why he was there in the first place. Most of the aid agencies have pulled out of Iraq about 2 years ago, and certainly after the kidnapping of the British aid worker Margaret Hassan in October last year. Most of the other foreigners work within this very, very heavily fortified green zone. Meanwhile, of course, a very anxious time for his family. His wife, Pat, is waiting for news at their northwest London house.
Sue, thanks very much indeed. We'll have more on that story throughout the programme.
Yeah, it's 3 minutes past 6 Monday morning. Here's Arouge at the news desk.
Thank you, Andrew. Good morning. Some muggers could escape prison under new sentencing guidelines published today. The new draft rules give judges guidance on how criminals should be dealt with. Robin Ross reports.
At the moment, street robbery and mugging has a prison sentence of 18 months to 5 years. But now controversial sentencing guidelines could see these criminals serving less time in jail or even no time. Under recommendations which could be approved today, robbers using minimal force would receive more lenient treatment. Juvenile robbers would never get a custodial sentence, adults would be handed a community penalty, and if sentenced, it would be for no more than 2 years. At the moment, it averages at 3 years. Last year, there were 89,000 recorded robberies. Over 7,500 were sentenced, of whom 5,063 were jailed. The explosion in prison numbers has forced the government to rethink how it deals with criminals, but some critics believe the punishment should always fit the crime.
Robin Ross reporting. In just over an hour's time, the trial of Saddam Hussein will resume in Baghdad. The former Iraqi leader is accused of murder and torture. He's expected to attend the hearing, which will last 3 days before being adjourned. Iraqi police say they foiled an attempt to kill the chief investigating judge in the trial. It's been the first weekend for pubs and clubs under the new 24-hour licensing laws. Jonathan Swain's been out on the town in Nottingham. Jonathan, much change there?
Well, Rouge, 24-hour drinking hasn't had an impact yet, and I think that that's the key word. It's perhaps quieter than usual. It was a freezing cold Saturday night. There's also many people are also saving themselves for Christmas as well. We spent the evening with the paramedics until 5 o'clock in the morning. Having said that, it was still very lively and rather an unpleasant evening for a handful of people. Stabbed, a broken nose and a bottle in the face, and this was a routine Saturday night out. This 21-year-old's birthday celebrations ended early, the 10-inch stab wound to his back. An hour later, and we were on another call, this time a drunken fight in a nightclub, and paramedics treated a man for a glass wound to his face. And there are those people who are so drunk they don't want to be helped. This man said he'd rather walk, even though he had a stab wound to his leg and hand. All very unpleasant, but paramedics say nothing out of the ordinary.
A lot of them is drink and drug related, where it's an assault after being in pubs and drinking for quite a period of time, and then a fight will break out. And it's often minor injuries, but it can often be very serious. But most are here just for a fun night out. The bars may be open later, but can we really drink any longer? From around 1:30 in the morning, partygoers were leaving. Drink wasn't a priority, just a kebab and a taxi home. That was pretty much the picture right across the country. So have fears about binge drinking being exaggerated? Well, there certainly wasn't a dramatic increase in incidents over the weekend, but it is early days. Many people came here to Nottingham for a good time, and a Rouge, that's exactly what they got.
Jonathan, thank you. Britain's teenagers are experimenting with sex, drugs and alcohol at an increasingly young age. Independent research commissioned by mental health experts claims that 78% of 12 to 19-year-olds have drunk alcohol, including half of 13-year-olds. 29% have tried illegal drugs and 40% admit to having had sex. A father accused of murdering his 10-year-old terminally ill son will go on trial again today. Former SAS soldier Andrew Ragg from West Sussex denied murdering his 10-year-old son Jacob, who suffered from Hunter syndrome. The jury in the original trial was dismissed when it failed to reach a verdict. Friends who visit with their children will cost homeowners over £1 billion next year, according to research. 1 million pieces of furniture will be broken and almost as many will have wine spilt over them. The average accident costs £80, though some people are left with damage totalling more than £10,000. It's 7 minutes past 6. I'm back in half an hour. Now it's back to Kate and Andrew.
Thanks very much indeed. Just having a quick look at the front pages of the newspapers this morning, looking at the Times here. Jealousy is no longer an excuse for murder. This looks specifically at men. The Lord Chief Justice is going to look at men who kill their husbands under the idea that they've been provoked. They're going to face tougher jail sentences because they said that women in the same situation tend to get tough jail sentences anyway because it's thought it has to be premeditated. The Guardian, child support is forced to pay back wrongly accused men. Gosh, the CSA always seems to be in trouble for some reason or other, doesn't it? This is a DNA test revealing that 3,000 men were wrongly accused by mothers in paternity suits, and the money is now going to have to be paid back to them. The Daily Telegraph, Labour faces call to scrap two-tier pensions. This is public sector workers could also have their retirement age raised to 67, along with the rest of the country. And the Independent, that United Nations summit on climate change in Montreal, a group of 10 countries, including countries like Papua New Guinea and Costa Rica, say if you pay us, we'll save the rainforest for everyone. They're going to mount protests at that.
And the Daily Mail this morning centres on abortion. Their headline, 50 babies a year are alive after an abortion. And the revelation triggered demands, of course, for the time limit for terminations to be cut. At the moment, the procedure is currently offered on demand up until the 24th week of pregnancy. No justice, says The Sun this morning. Government won't put Iraqis on trial for killing our boys because there's a fear that if they're convicted, they will face the death penalty. Daily Mirror this morning, Ian Huntley, £1 million secret diary, and the government trying to put a stop to the publication of that, saying the risk of publication is high. And Diana death crash sensation, European court orders French to answer murder claims. That's what the Daily Express says this morning. A quick look at the Daily Telegraph sport front page. Rooney passes best tests. A rather wonderful picture there to start off the Daily Telegraph sports coverage for this week. And we'll stay with sport. Roman Abramovich is rather used to splashing the cash, but maybe a little bit too much, according to some reports. Chelsea today face a formal investigation of alleged illegal player payments, and their closest challengers in the Premiership, Man United, narrowly beating West Ham over the weekend. You may have seen Wayne Rooney in tremendous form there. Joining me now, Paul Elliott. Very good morning.
Morning, sir.
Illegal payments at Chelsea. It's been around a while, been a bit of a sniff of this story for quite some time. Mourinho under pressure with this?
I don't think so, Andrew. I mean, there was alleged payments, but I think, to be fair to Chelsea, they've said to the FA, listen, you know, here's our books, quite happy to have full disclosure, and in essence really got nothing to hide. So it's just one of these things trying to destabilise and derail the Chelsea success story, I think.
OK, an emotional game for Manchester United at the weekend. A minute's silence, actually a minute's applause for George Best. I thought it was rather moving.
Yeah, what a wonder. Manchester United, he certainly would have been proud of, and more so by a young man called Mr Rooney.
I mean, specifically Wayne Rooney. He is turning into the player we thought he might a year or two ago. If you
comprehensively winning 2-1.
To win a World Cup, how many players like Rooney do you think you need?
3.
And we've got?
3. Rooney. Oh, Rooney. 3 in 1.
And Steven Gerrard possibly.
Absolutely, and Lampard as well.
What about Everton? Picked up 3 valuable points.
They did
against,
indeed.
Newcastle.
I mean, they were battered last week by West Brom, but you know, adversity breeds character. They're a tough competition.
Bit of pressure off David Moyes, maybe. Fulham beating Bolton 2-1. Juve sent off Middlesbrough and West Brom, settling for a draw 2-2. Let's talk about Scotland, though. Rangers have now gone 8 games without a win. First time in their 100-year-plus history.
And I'll give you another stat. This is the first time in a whole month since 1891 that they've not won a game.
Really?
I found that out. I certainly did. I've got to throw that in the bag. Andrew.
You've been on the internet, haven't
I have
you?
indeed. But they're 15 points off the pace. I mean, I feel sorry for Alex. He's a very good man. But I think they're going to wait and see how this European campaign goes in the Champions League. If they qualify for the knockout stages, maybe still in a job. I hope so. I've got a lot of time for it.
They've got 1 game left to get through, hasn't it?
Against Inter Milan as well.
Well, yeah, a little bit of a tricky one there. What about Charlton's Alan Kirbishley? There's talk about him being on the line.
Oh, I don't think so, Curbs. I think he's done a magnificent job at Charlton, as you well know. The second longest Premiership manager after Sir Alex. He's building a wonderful club. They're tremendous supporters. And I can't really see him going north of the border.
Just a quick word on the rugby. Well done to New Zealand All Blacks, beating everybody in the UK over the last month and a half or so. Well done Wales over Australia as well, England over Samoa. And how sorry I was to hear of Richard Burns, the World Rally champion.
34 years of age, passing away with a brain tumour, isn't it? We wish him well. I mean, he's made such a massive contribution to the sport as well. And as you rightly say, such a young man has achieved and given a lot of pleasure to people.
Came as a very nasty surprise. Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It's nearly 6:15, and overnight Joanne Lees, the girlfriend of murdered British backpacker Peter Falconio, has been recalled to the witness box in Australia. Lawyers defending mechanic Bradley Murdoch, who's accused of killing Falconio and attacking Lees, questioned her on alleged inconsistencies in her evidence. Well, joining us on the line now from outside the courtroom in Darwin is Channel 9 reporter Bethany Jensen. This would seem to be a significant development. And what does it entail, recalling her to the box in this way?
Certainly, to have the star witness recalled just a day from the prosecution closing is pretty unusual, and it's come about because in the days after Peter Falconio went missing, Joanne Lees spent many hours with an artist to put together a drawing of her attacker's car, and throughout the process a police officer took notes, and it's these notes that have raised the conflicting information. The policewoman wrote down that Joanne Lees told the artist there was wooden shelving in the back of the car, and there's been no mention in any of Joanne Lees' statements of this shelving. And of course, Murdoch's car didn't have the shelving. But Joanne told the court today that she was sure that she never saw any shelving, and perhaps it was actually a description of her own combi van.
So Bradley Murdoch, do you think he'll be called in evidence in his defence? I mean, if the prosecution's closing, presumably that would happen this week.
The prosecution are expected to close their case tomorrow, and the defence will then have the opportunity to call any witnesses they want, including Bradley Murdoch. And although the jury's not aware of this, we have information that the defence counsel spent many hours at the prison over the weekend preparing Murdoch to give evidence. So it seems quite likely he may take the stand tomorrow or Wednesday.
Are we expecting a long defence?
No, we've had 82 witnesses from the prosecution in just 28 days, or 29 days, that'll be tomorrow. And if the defence do call witnesses, we expect it to be fairly brief, not lasting beyond a week.
OK, Bethany, thank you very much indeed for updating us. Thank you.
Thank you.
6:15 this Monday morning. You're watching the news hour here on GMTV. Let's get up to date with this morning's headlines. And the Foreign Office has launched an urgent investigation after a British aid worker was kidnapped in Baghdad. Professor Norman Kember was taken with 3 other Westerners.
Muggers could serve less time in jail under new sentencing guidelines to be announced today.
And a survey's shown that having friends over could cost hosts a total of £1 billion next year in breakages and spillages. Right, the way teenagers live today could be creating a mental health crisis in years to come. Teens now turn to drink, they turn to drugs and sex at a younger age than they used to, and many are riddled with anxiety over the issues in their lives. Amanda Sargent reports on the findings of a new survey.
They're worrying statistics for all parents of teenagers. Of the 12 to 19-year-olds questioned, 78% have drunk alcohol, including nearly half of all 13-year-olds. 46% of teenagers have been offered illegal drugs like marijuana and cocaine, and over a quarter have actually gone on to try them. And almost half, 49% of 16-year-olds have had sex, 20% of them admitting they felt troubled after a sexual relationship.
Well, my next guests know exactly what it's like to be a teenager. They are teenagers. 15-year-old twins Imogen and Maya Townley join me, along with their mum Sylvia and the son's agony aunt Deirdre Sanders, who's heard it all over the years, no doubt. Talk to you in just a moment, Deirdre, but if I could turn to the girls first. What sort of things are worrying you and your group at the moment? What are the sort of the big issues that you're talking about?
Body shape is causes quite a lot of tension within our group, because obviously everyone's different shapes, and it causes quite a lot of argument.
And where do you see these sort of body shapes? Do you think that there are a lot of images coming at you from magazines, from on the TV?
Not so much. There's two kind of body shapes that are fashionable. The first one is really over-the-top, skinny, anorexic model, and the second one is I want to be a real woman, I want to have curves.
And what's in at the moment for you and your age group? What's the sort of the trend?
Curves are in at the moment.
Curves are in there. I mean, does it change in a matter of weeks?
Yeah, it does. Changes from year to year, really. Like in year 9, it was really fashionable to be skinny like Kate Moss. And now everyone wants to look like Catherine Zeta-Jones or Julia Roberts.
I mean, do you take magazines to school? Is it the TV and you get on the phone, you talk about it? Is it just constantly out there, that image?
Well, it changes, but there's always like an image that everyone wants to look like.
Really? And what about drink? Are your age group drinking a lot? Have you got friends who drink and who actually drink to excess?
Sure, at parties, yeah.
Really? And where are the parents in all this? Do they approve of that, or do they allow that to happen?
I don't know, they're just upstairs or they go out for the evening.
I suppose at some point, Sylvia, children have to make that transition to adulthood. They have to take responsibility for themselves. But do you see things that worry you as a parent?
At home with Imogen and Maya, we have constant ongoing discussions and debates about what's right and what we think they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing, and hearing what they think. There's a lot of hearing how we're getting a mismatch really between our views and how things are. But I think we just have to keep listening. And yes, sometimes it's worrying for parents, but that's good because we have to know where our children are.
Indeed. So you have an ongoing communication in your house, but as a
teacher... Not always terribly communicative, but it's ongoing.
No, exactly. And I suppose you have to stay in touch with what's going on at school as well. You're already there as a teacher. As an ex-teacher. Did you see things change as a teacher with the body of pupils that you're dealing with?
I think the amount of money that children have, disposable income, we all have far more disposable income. A long time ago, people couldn't have even tried to buy alcohol in the quantities now that somebody will have alcohol to take to a party. Or...
So it's become a bit sort of a fabric of society,
rather. I think just because there's more money around.
Deirdre, how have things changed over the years in terms of the letters, the subject matter that you're dealing with? I'd like actually specifically to talk about family breakdown. And, I mean,
we're now looking at a situation where something like 50% of parents are going to split. And I think for a lot of kids that puts a huge pressure. And I so agree with Sylvia, the important thing is to keep talking, keep an ongoing discussion going. But often, of course, if there's a relationship break, the parents' eye goes off the ball. They're so preoccupied with all the emotional dramas they're going through. So you get distressed kids that no one's talking to. I'm actually furious with the drinks industry because I think alco pops are outrageous. You know, it's sent such a message out to young people that it's okay to start drinking when you're about 13, when you like those sort of sugary drinks. And I think parents really do need to, it's just keeping your eye on the ball all the time. It is actually focusing on the children, talking to them, keeping the discussions open, watching out for things like self-harming. I mean, there's a virtual epidemic of self-harming going on now as well.
Is this amongst girls?
It's boys as well. I mean, it is more amongst girls, and there's almost like a fashion for it when they're about 13, 14, but then it becomes more serious and becomes ongoing. You know, the ones who've got much more serious disturbance, and it'll just carry on as a real problem. Sex, it's a question of trying to talk to them so that they take responsibility, understand the consequences. But there's so much research which shows that if young people are looking forward to a bright, fantastic future, they make sensible decisions. It's the ones who don't know where their lives are going and feel very hopeless that get into self-destructive patterns.
811 on the text. I'm sure you'll have views on this. You can contact us through gm.tv as well. We'll revisit this discussion a little bit later on. For the moment, I'll thank you very much for your views this morning. If you're worried about your teenager, you can find all the help you need on our website, which is, of course, gm.tv.
Still to come on the News Hour, more reaction to the shocking Royal Marines bullying video, talking to the father of one of the deep-cut soldiers, Jeff Gray, about what he thinks.
And on a lighter note, our Jenny is in the jungle with the latest from the Australian outback. Actually, she's in a very nice hotel room. Jenny, hi.
Hi there, no jungle for me today, Andrew. Now that Cannon's gone, will Bobby still have a ball in the jungle? The evictions have started, as has the backstabbing. Yes, I've got all the news from I'm a Celebrity coming up after the break.
Hi there, you're watching the News Hour on GMTV. So how will Bobby cope? Yes, poor old Bobby Ball's been left behind in the jungle after his comedy partner, Tommy Cannon, became the first evictee from I'm a Celebrity last night. Our Jungle Jen savoured the action. And for a minute there, Jenny, we all thought it was going to be chips for the chop, but it turned out not to be.
I know, those ITV producers are very tricky. They throw a red herring in every now and again. In fact, I should tell you that sometimes the person with the second least votes isn't necessarily the one that Ant and Dec says might go. So they do that to kind of worry the viewers, but more to the point, to worry the person in the camp. So David will probably be sitting there biting his nails at the moment. But last night was the first eviction. Tommy Cannon did go. It's also around this stage that all the backstabbing and cattiness starts. And hooray! We love it when that happens. And Seathach and Jilly, they were the ones that did that because they took their microphones off to complain about the Duke. Can you believe it? They think he's a showman playing every trick in the book. Well, hello, isn't that what the game's all about? Now, in case you were in any doubt how Jilly feels about David, listen to this and you'll be set straight.
He is just an MCP, male chauvinist big, and maybe I show more attitude than the others, and so he's had a bit of a witch hunt against me.
The chips are down big time.
You see, I think there's a storm brewing in camp, not just outside in the jungle, inside as well, which is great. We do like a good fight. But Mrs. Chips, obviously Lauren Dickinson, has actually arrived, I can confirm, on the 8:15 out of London via Dubai and Singapore. She's now here in Queensland, and she has specifically said some things about Carol and Jilly. So she's getting her own back. I love I'm a Celebrity for this. Now, Ant and Dec came into camp last night, and obviously they said that Tommy was going, which was a little bit of a surprise because, to be honest, all the press out here did think that Kimberly would go because she hasn't contributed really in any way. But it was quite sad to see Tommy go. He was very emotional. His family were very upset, and he will be on the show a little bit later on this morning, live from Australia, talking about that. But he did do well in his time in the camp. He was very successful. He got 9 stars in the trial with Bobby, and he also is worrying how Bobby will cope without him there as the tower of strength beside him. But the trial last night, the bit that was really funny, it was Anthony Costa doing karaoke. Now, I've got to say, this morning, Anthony has been criticised slightly in the press for not sticking it out and for running like a girl when the crickets were released on him. He got 5 stars. He was very close to getting 3 stars, but it was unfortunately the fear of the unknown which scared him, and he blew it, if you like what I did there. That was clever. It took me hours to think of that one. Anyway, his girlfriend Adele Silver will be here a little bit later on telling us what she thinks he's like in camp, and also to tell you why you should vote for him.
Oh, very exciting, Jenny. And as you said, Tommy Cannon's going to be on the show after 8 o'clock. Tell his side of things a bit later on.
He did wimp out. He was doing so well. It was the best TV moment of the weekend by
What, Anthony?
miles. Yes, singing beautifully, Daydream Believer, and then he wimped completely. Got 5 stars.
Can't blame him, really, can you?
Good
But anyway,
fun.
we'll watch a bit more of that later on. Thanks, Jenny.
6:27 is the time. Competition time now, and if you can't face the idea of Christmas shopping just yet, Richard Arnold could have the perfect prize for you.
Yes, folks, forget the Christmas shopping because all this could be yours. You will get all these decorations for inside and outside the house, courtesy of Premier Decorations. There is a 42-inch high-definition plasma screen and DVD player, so you can watch all of your favourite TV programmes and films this Christmas. And while you're doing that, you can munch and drink your way through a £500 hamper. And that's not all, because on top of that, we are throwing in £3,000 spending money. To have a chance of winning this complete Christmas package, all you have to do is answer this question. Which of Santa's reindeer has a nose that glows? Is it A, Vixen, B, Prancer, or C, Rudolph?
You can dial 09068 100 100. That's 09068 100 100. Or you can text A, B, or C as your answer, plus your name and full address to 81149. Or you can enter via the website.
OK, good luck with that. Lines close at 9. The winner will be announced in Lorraine's show.
Yes, we're going to get the weather with Andrea now, though.
GMTV Weather, sponsored by Tops Tiles. Brightening homes, whatever the weather.
Hello there, good morning. Now we're seeing some snow showers already this morning across the north and east. As you can see though, we've got a couple of warnings in place. We've got blizzard conditions across the far north of Scotland. Icy stretches going to be causing problems for parts of Northern Ireland, as expected, northeastern parts of England, but also into the south and west. So an unsettled start to the week. There you can see the snow flurries across Scotland, moving down the eastern side of the UK as well. Away from that, we are seeing some sunshine, so a bright, crisp start to other areas. Will it improve this afternoon? Well, for Scotland, we'll continue to see those snow showers across the Northern Highlands, maybe just clipping into northernmost tip across parts of Aberdeenshire. Very, very cold day expected across Scotland. We've got a biting easterly wind, but it will stay drier across central and western areas. So not a bad afternoon for you, but it will feel cold. Similar story too across the Borders region into Northern Ireland. Again, we'll continue to see some snow flurries around County Durham, moving down into the northeast of England, more generally into parts of Yorkshire. Now here the Met Office has issued a warning for this morning for the Yorkshire moors. We're expecting to see anywhere between 5 and 10 centimetres falling, so bear that in mind if you are thinking of heading out on the roads. Now we will continue to see grey skies across East Anglia. Again, could see some snow flurries here, biting wind as I say, so it's going to be cold here this afternoon. Similar story too across some parts of Wales. Generally speaking, more over the higher ground that we're going to be seeing this snow, but everywhere is going to be feeling cold. A grey start to the day for the southeast. It will be an improving picture this afternoon, at least in terms of temperatures, at least in terms of sunshine. Temperature-wise, it's going to stay cold. Wind's not quite as much of a feature, but it's still going to be bitterly cold. And then into the south and west. Well, again, as you can see, continuing to see some snowfall in places, rather more sleety. Temperatures getting up to around 6 or 7 degrees. Easy summary. For your in-depth local outlook, visit our website, gm.tv, or for a 10-day forecast, call GMTV's Weatherline on 0905 514 0000.
Good morning, it's only 6:30. It's Monday, the 28th of November.
Yes, you're watching the news hour on GMTV. And in the next half hour, getting more reaction to that really shocking video purportedly showing violent bullying rituals within the Royal Marines. Certainly the scenes are shocking, whatever they're showing, aren't they?
Yeah, it certainly is. We'll be talking more about that with Colonel Collins. And just 5 acts left in X Factor. But do they all deserve to be there? We'll be talking about the programme with Polly Hudson in 20 minutes' time. But first to our top story this morning, and the Foreign Office has begun an urgent investigation into the kidnapping in Iraq of a British aid worker. Sue Jameson is at the Foreign Office in London. Sue, morning. What more do we know?
Well, the Foreign Office have confirmed that it was Professor Kemba who was taken. Aside from that, there are few official details. But the country is in touch with both America and Canada, and an urgent investigation has been launched. There are a few more details about Professor Kemba this morning. We know that he was a peace activist, that he'd been very against the war in Iraq, and that he was there as part of a group of humanitarian workers. He'd been a professor at a London teaching hospital. Now, it seems that the group, which is one of the largest groups of Westerners taken, was in the western part of the city where there is minimal security, and of course that is going to beg the question of why he was there in the first place. Most of the aid agencies have pulled out of Iraq about 2 years ago, and certainly after the kidnapping of the British aid worker Margaret Hassan in October last year. Most of the other foreigners work within this very, very heavily fortified green zone. Meanwhile, of course, a very anxious time for his family. His wife, Pat, is waiting for news at their northwest London house.
OK, Sue, thank you very much indeed.
Let's bring you up to date with the rest of the news you're waking up to now. Here's Arouge.
Thank you, Kate. Good morning. Some muggers could escape prison under new sentencing guidelines published today. The new draft rules give judges guidance on how criminals should be dealt with. Robin Ross reports.
At the moment, street robbery and mugging has a prison sentence of 18 months to 5 years. But now controversial sentencing guidelines could see these criminals serving less time in jail or even no time. Under recommendations, which could be approved today, robbers using minimal force would receive more lenient treatment. Juvenile robbers would never get a custodial sentence, adults would be handed a community penalty, and if sentenced, it would be for no more than 2 years. At the moment, it averages at 3 years. Last year, there were 89,000 recorded robberies. Over 7,500 were sentenced, of whom 5,063 were jailed. The explosion in prison numbers has forced the government to rethink how it deals with criminals, but some critics believe the punishment should always fit the crime.
In around an hour's time, the trial of Saddam Hussein will resume in Baghdad. The former Iraqi leader is accused of murder and torture. He's expected to attend the hearing, which will last 3 days before being adjourned. Iraqi police say they foiled an attempt to kill the chief investigating judge in the trial. It's been the first weekend for pubs and clubs under the new 24-hour licensing rules. Jonathan Swain's been out on the town in Nottingham. Jonathan, good morning. Is there much change there?
Monsieur Rouge, well, if the weekend here is anything to go by, then the fears about 24-hour drinking may well have been exaggerated. But having said that, it was fairly lively here in Nottingham on Saturday night, and a fairly unpleasant night for a handful of people. Stabbed, a broken nose and a bottle in the face, and this was a routine Saturday night out. This 21-year-old's birthday celebrations ended early, with a 10-inch stab wound to his back. An hour later, and we were on another call. This time a drunken fight in a nightclub, and paramedics treated a man for a glass wound to his face. And there are those people who are so drunk they don't want to be helped. This man said he'd rather walk even though he had a stab wound to his leg and hand. All very unpleasant, but paramedics say nothing out of the ordinary.
A lot of them is drink and drug related, where it's an assault after being in pubs and drinking for quite a period of time, and then a fight will break out, and it's often minor injuries, but it can often be very serious.
But most are here just for a fun night out. The bars may be open later, but can we really drink any longer? From around 1:30 in the morning, partygoers were leaving. Drink wasn't a priority, just a kebab and a taxi home. But what happened in Nottingham was pretty much the picture right across the country. Police forces tell us that there was no increase in drunken behaviour, and it is worth stressing that the majority of people came to Nottingham on Saturday night for a good time, and Arouge, that's exactly what they had.
Jonathan, thank you. Overnight, Joanne Lees, the girlfriend of the murdered British backpacker Peter Falconio, has been called back to an Australian court to give further evidence. Miss Lees spent 45 minutes in the witness box answering questions about a vehicle Bradley Murdoch is alleged to have forced her into. Murdoch denies murdering Mr. Falconio and could be called to give evidence tomorrow. Now, we might think we're an honest bunch, but around 700,000 people steal something from British shops every year. Around 8% of those surveyed said they'd taken something accidentally, but 1% admitted to shoplifting deliberately. Each person took an average of about £100 worth of goods. If you're inviting friends into your home this Christmas, you may want to put away your best china. A new report says visitors are likely to damage our property to the tune of £1 billion over the coming year. Kate Ricordan has the details.
It should be a good experience. You invited them after all, but friends and their children will spend 2006 breaking 1 million pieces of furniture, drenching nearly as many in wine, and then find time to demolish 800,000 items of sentimental value. Billy Partridge found his stereo broken after a housewarming party. He wasn't insured and had no idea who'd caused the damage.
It's not very nice to sort of have to play detective with your own friends. I didn't really want to have to do that. So I just thought, well, I'm going to have to sort of bite the bullet and take the hit myself.
The average accident costs £80, though some 16,000 households were left with damage totalling more than £10,000 last year, according to the Halifax survey. So when your friends say they've had a smashing time, unfortunately, they could mean it literally.
It's 6:37. The next bulletin's at 7 o'clock. Now it's back to Kate and Andrew.
Thank you. You've got to furnish accordingly, haven't you? If you
But
know somebody's
youngsters.
coming here. A white carpet in your new place?
Well,
Baby on the way?
yes, I know. I sense there might be some dark-coloured rugs going down quite quickly.
And how was your shopping experience this weekend?
Bought a sofa this weekend. Very exciting, part of the nesting. And the staff were very nice, unlike, apparently,
Yeah.
most staff across the country.
Rude shop staff ensure we're not being served. Sales assistants are ruder, more ignorant and less helpful than they were 10 years ago, according to one of the biggest surveys of its kind. But if you get on the phone and try and call somebody, try that one. I tried to call somebody in Oxford Street the other day, and yeah, they said, "We value your call. You're in a queuing system,"
I know.
and then hung up on me.
I know. It's so frustrating.
That's
Mind you,
service.
I bet the sales system would say that customers are more rude than they were 10 years ago. So anyway, we want to know what you think. 81189 GM.TV. Are we just generally ruder?
Entering the season of
And of Christmas, of course. I know.
Happy Christmas. Here's what's happening where you are. Back in a moment.
Good morning. Welcome to the Breakfast News from ITV Granada. The jury is expected to retire to consider its verdict today in the Anthony Walker murder trial. 17-year-old Michael Barton from Huyton denies killing Anthony, who was found dead in McGoldrick Park in July. 20-year-old Paul Taylor has admitted murder. The jury spent 2 weeks listening to evidence. Anthony's family has been present for much of the trial. 2 women who've lost relatives to the hospital superbug MRSA will hand a petition into Downing Street today demanding more action from the government. They believe the public isn't being told enough about the infection. Tessa Chapman reports.
Bev Hurst's pink briefcase holds the ammunition in her fight to change attitudes towards MRSA. She's collected more than 5,000 signatures on a petition from people who want the government to be more open about the scale of the hospital superbug. That's also the number of patients it kills every year. Her mother was one of those statistics.
She'd actually contracted MRSA. They didn't tell us anything about it, and it took me 2 years to find out that she was actually profuse with MRSA.
Bev's realised she's not alone in wanting answers. Colin Law went to hospital for a routine test.
We didn't find out until 14 weeks after Colin had died, when they told us Colin had had MRSA. We weren't told when he was in there at all.
Bev and Mavis will later tell the Health Select Committee they want all infections acquired in hospital to be monitored so true figures can be documented. They hope they're taking this journey so others don't have to.
The effects of 24-hour drinking are being assessed today after the first weekend of the new licensing laws. We sent our cameras to Blackburn, where several pubs had applied for the new licences. But despite the usual drunken antics of weekend revellers, police say there wasn't the increase in drink-related crime that people had feared. Some pubs, which had the new licences available, chose to shut at the usual time. A group of Merseyside comics is hoping to land the Christmas #1 with a new charity single. The record's called It's Christmas and features Ricky Tomlinson, Ken Dodd and Stan Boardman. It's released later today, along with a video in which Ricky dons festive gear. The comedians hope to raise money for the Imagine appeal at Alder Hey Children's Hospital. That's it for now. I'm back at 7:05. Time now for a look at the region's weather.
Take a deep breath.
There's no fog here!
And shout down the weather.
It'll be a fairly bright start with some sunny spells, but also some scattered showers. The rain will die out this afternoon with skies brightening. Temperatures will reach 5 Celsius, 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Hi
there, good morning. Quick look at the front page, as if you haven't had time to check your mailbox yet this morning. The Guardian Child Support Agency forced to pay back wrongly accused men. Some 3,000 men after DNA tests revealed that they weren't in fact the fathers, and that mothers had suggested they were in the paternity claims, and the CSA has to pay the money back. Daily Telegraph, Labour faces call to scrap two-tier pensions. This is the raising of that retirement age, could apply to public sector workers as well, although of course as you might expect some resistance from unions there. The Independent, pay up to save the rainforest. This is the United Nations Summit on Climate Change in Montreal, and a group of 10 countries who have rainforests within them say we need money if you want us to save it to benefit the rest of the world. And the Times, jealousy no longer an excuse for murder. Increased sentencing guidelines to be issued by the Lord Chief Justice, saying that it's not necessarily an excuse if you find jealousy or if you caught your wife in a difficult
Compromising
position. Compromising.
That's the word.
He's always got the right word. And those pictures there of those shocking video, which we're going to talk more about in a moment on the front page of the Times too.
Daily Mirror this morning, Huntley's £1 million secret diary that apparently he's trying to flog or at least publish. The government is saying, I don't think so. The Sun newspaper, no justice this morning. Government won't put Iraqis on trial for killing our boys because they fear that if they're found guilty, they'll be sentenced to death, which is not something that they believe in. Inside pages of the Daily Mail this morning, this is this Marines video nasty storm that we're talking about. Shocking video footages of a Royal Marine recruit being beaten unconscious at an initiation ceremony. It's engulfing the armed forces, rather, this morning, and there's some pictures there, and a commentary, in fact, on the right-hand side from Colonel Tim Collins, who I'll be hearing from in just a moment. Now, when you think about Iraq, Afghanistan, Sierra Leone, Kosovo, the Falkland Islands, the Royal Marines have a long and proud history of honourable service in conflicts across the world. That is without doubt. But today, it is mired in shame, it has to be said. A secret video, apparently showing naked Marines being forced to fight each other in what could be an initiation ceremony, came to light at the weekend. These pictures courtesy of the News of the World. At one point, a soldier is allegedly knocked unconscious by a superior. Now, the Ministry of Defence has launched a criminal investigation, as you might expect. And joining us now from his home in Whitstable is the former Army commander in Iraq, Colonel Tim Collins. And here in the studio, Jeff Gray, the father of one of the young Army recruits who died at Deep Cut Barracks in Surrey. Colonel, if I could turn to you first. If this footage is real, the MOD's zero tolerance on bullying is a bit of a shambles, isn't it?
It's certainly not good, and for this to be to happen, albeit in a unit, is unacceptable, and the ramifications of it are serious. They're serious for the image of the armed forces in the nation. They're concerned for the parents of people who are serving, and they do damage worldwide and give succor to our enemies.
I've heard the word beasting being used. I've heard about the possibility that this could be considered team building. I mean, we're not raising weak men here. We're raising men who could one day take life and perhaps even give life together. Doesn't this toughen them up?
There's, in order to prepare the young men and women of the services for service on the battlefield, fighting the Queen's enemies, training has to be tough. There's no doubt about that. There comes a line when it crosses, serves no military function, and it's not constructive, and it's not character building. And that's a point where it becomes gratuitous for those who are conducting the training, violence, and even humiliation of a sexual nature. And that's bullying, and bullying is unacceptable, destructive, and must be stamped out wherever it's found and treated as a serious matter and charges levelled.
And are you pleased with the way the authorities responsible for dealing with these matters have responded so far?
Well, we'll wait and see. My biggest concern is that, of course, this must be dealt through the Army legal system, which is there to support the armed forces. My concern would be the nature of the investigation. There have been a significant number of recent cases where investigations by service police have been condemned in the courts as being flat-footed, taking too long, and not coming up with the goods. I think this is the last chance for service police to carry out one of these investigations, or we're going to have to look at a different way of doing it.
Did you see this when you were, well, new to the services yourself?
Sorry, if I...
Did you see this sort of thing, or were you subject to this sort of thing when you were a young man going into the armed forces yourself?
I wasn't, but in the early 1980s, when I first joined the army, this sort of thing went on in the army, not on a large scale, but did go on. And there's a couple of scandals, and that was stamped out in the army. There's a couple of notorious cases, and people went to jail over it. And it's disappeared and has been gone for 2 decades now. And this is the first time organised, humiliating initiation ceremonies have re-emerged. It's got to be snapped and stamped out.
Really, Colonel, this is an issue of leadership and or lack of it if these pictures are real, and they certainly look real.
Absolutely, because what we have here are people who are set in authority over other volunteer servicemen. Remember, we've got a volunteer army, abusing that power and humiliating those who it's their duty to lead and to mentor. And that is attacking the very core and fabric of our volunteer armed forces, and undermines our position as some of the best armed forces in the world. And for that reason, it must be taken very gravely, and the investigation must be swift, and any sentences handed down must reflect the gravity of the damage that's being done.
Okay, Colonel Collins, thank you very much indeed. Talk to Jeff Gray now, whose son wasn't a Marine, but he was an Army private. I wonder, Jeff, what you made of the scenes that you saw.
I was totally horrified at the video I watched yesterday morning. I mean, there's a fine line between bullying and discipline. That line was crossed well and truly with that video yesterday. I can't envisage any reason whatsoever we should have naked Marines fighting in a field. It can't help them on the battlefield.
And how are you getting on with your investigation? Your son died at Deep Cut Barracks.
Well, as you say, my son was shot at Deep Cut Barracks. We're still waiting for the police investigations to be disclosed to ourselves. Nicholas Blake, QC, is doing a review for the MOD. We're still waiting for his results. It's just a long, hard battle. We need to have disclosure. We need to know what happened to our children at Deep Cut, so we can move on with our lives.
Do you think that they're covering up?
I do. I most certainly do think that there's an element of cover-up there. It's an element of cock-up and cover-up.
Okay.
They made a right mess of the investigation, and now they're covering up since that's gone forward.
All right, Jeff, thanks ever so much for coming in this morning, and thanks to Colonel Tim Collins as well.
You're watching the News Hour on GMTV. This morning's headlines are that the Foreign Office has launched an urgent investigation after a British aid worker was kidnapped in Baghdad. Professor Norman Kember was taken with 3 other Westerners.
Almost 80% of teenagers have tried alcohol, according to a study. It also suggests that drugs are being experimented with at a younger and younger age.
And a survey has shown that having friends over could cost the hosts a total of £1 billion next year in breakages and spillages. Now, in just over an hour's time, Saddam Hussein will enter one of the most heavily guarded courtrooms in the world as his trial in Iraq resumes, with witnesses expected to take to the stand for the first time. His appearance comes after assassinations of defence lawyers, a plot to kill the chief investigator, and threats against witnesses. Well, only yesterday, Iraq's former interim leader, Ayad Alawi, said that human rights offences under the current administration are as bad as those under Saddam Hussein. So you could ask, if nothing has changed, what was the point of the war? Well, joining us now is Abdul Bari Atwan, the editor of the Arabic newspaper Al-Qud, and Dr. Salma Haddad, who was born in Iraq and supported the war. I mean, that's what people are going to think, isn't it? I could say to you, first of all, Salma, you know, if nothing's changed, why did so many people die, and why did we get involved in the war at all?
Well, I'd beg to differ. Things have changed dramatically. If you were to speak to me a day before the war, or any Iraqi a day before the war, and said 2.5 years on, we would have had the first democratic elections with the help of the UN, the first constitutional referendum with the help of the UN, and now another election for the permanent government only 2.5 years after the war, I would have told you that you're just you've got a great imagination. So
So things are bad, but they're not as bad as they were, and progress is being made overall.
Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, after the trial resumes, despite a murder plot against the chief investigator, and despite these insurgencies and concerns over that, is it important that that trial goes ahead?
Well, yes, it is important, but actually, let me comment about what happened since the regime changes in Iraq. 100,000 Iraqi were killed, 400,000 were injured. The world spent $300 billion, and the outcome is very, very bad. We heard Iyad Allawi, the first Iraqi prime minister after regime changes, saying that it could be worse than the days of Saddam Hussein. So why we spend these monies, why we lost soldiers,
well, some might
why
argue
we
that
lost
things often get worse before they get better. I mean, if you take away a regime, however wrong some might argue might be, it is at least a structure. When you remove that structure, chaos immediately erupts, doesn't
But
it?
the coast, and it is 3 years, nearly 3 years since the regime changes, and things are not improving. Yes, there are elections there, but if the election produce a government which practice torture and starving people to death, as we read in the papers, I think this is a disaster. I know there is a trial now for Saddam Hussein. Even the trial is completely unfair, and Iraq is not a model to export democracy to the region or human rights. It's a model to export terrorism, and we saw that 3 Iraqis, suicide bomber, blow themselves in Jordan and killing more than 60 people. So this is the new Iraq.
That is a point, isn't it, Sama, that it might be good that we are having more, you know, we have elections and there is a form of democracy gradually being put into place, but if it's leading to a regime which has institutionalised torture, then it's no better than the regime before.
Well, I think it's really important not to muddy the waters and point out where things have gone wrong. And the most wrong thing is reinstituting Baathists into the army and the security services. And if these people who were yesterday's murderers aren't removed from place, then they will practice the same torture that they practiced under Saddam. So it's really important to de-Baathify the current state.
The regime. All right, well, thank you very much to both of you. Thank you.
It's gone 10 to 7. It's Monday morning. Now, after 3 weeks in the bottom 2, the Conway sisters were finally booted off the X Factor on Saturday.
I am going to send home
Simon, I need an answer.
Come on! I'm going to send home the Conway sisters.
And at that point, Louis said, "Thank you, Simon. I'm glad that I came back." Polly Hudson is here. She's an X Factor addict. It is compulsive viewing. But is it to view the people singing or the people judging?
Well, it's a little bit of both, isn't it? It is a pantomime. I went down there a couple of weeks ago and literally the booing and woo, ah, he's behind you, all that kind of stuff. But I think in the 11th hour, started supporting the Conways because I just think against Chico, they can sing. He can't sing. He's got to have a little kid on to detract from the fact that he's the most annoying man that's ever lived.
That kid was the biggest star.
That kid was amazing. If it was just the kid, I'd be voting that kid. But I just think at least they can carry a tune. And Chico, you know, the fact that he's still in and Maria
Why is he still in?
What's
going on with the world?
He's fantastic. He takes the mick completely out of the whole show, doesn't he? Well, he's fantastic. He's got something that people love on a Saturday night.
I think in some kind of sick way, I would quite like him to win because it would sum up this year. It has all been just a little bit ridiculous and pantomime. This was surely one of the most excruciating moments ever screened on British television, though.
You've got that best at home as well,
Hey, man, this is me as a 15-year-old in front of the mirror giving that one. Absolutely.
You said too much.
Absolutely. What about Louis? We weren't sure whether he was going to come back, were we?
No, we really couldn't know what was going to happen. I mean, did they milk that or what? To be honest, I was taken in by it on the first day, and then I just thought this reeks of publicity stunt. I just think, come on, toughen up. It's not that hard what you're being asked to do.
Which way would you have voted? Would you have voted to get the Conways off?
Well, I mean, we'll never know, and, you know, how will we sleep?
Well,
thanks, Polly. We'll talk a little bit more later on.
Yes.
Good
don't sleep at all now. Andrew's staying around and Fiona's joining us, launching a quest to find Britain's worst dancer.
She'll be sitting right here in a moment. See you in a second. Next, the weather with Andrea. See ya.